When a show-off black belt calls a quiet 9-year-old girl onto the mat to make the class laugh, the gym roars until she moves once, and the whole room forgets how to breathe. Master Troy Daniels stood in the center of the packed Saturday demo, soaking in the cheers like he owned the air itself. He paced in slow circles, flashing a grin every time someone clapped. His voice boomed with that sharp edge he loved so much, the kind that made people look even when they didn't want to. He lifted his hands and the noise grew louder, feeding his pride. On the bleachers, a tiny girl sat with her backpack hugged to her chest. She didn't clap. She didn't cheer. She just watched with those steady, quiet eyes that never seemed to blink. Her mother stayed beside her, whispering now and then, but the girl never moved. Troy spotted her. His smirk sharpened. He pointed like he had just found the punchline to a joke he couldn't wait to tell. "You there, little one. Think you can handle the big leagues?" The students burst out laughing. Some clapped, some whistled. A few leaned forward, waiting for the girl to panic. The girl didn't panic, she just rose slowly, like every second mattered. Her eyes lowered, her face calm. No fear, no rush. Troy waved her over with a showy flick of his hand. "Come on, let's see what you've got." More laughter. Someone whispered, "This'll be good." The girl stepped forward. One step, then another. Her backpack still hanging from one shoulder until her mother gently slipped it off. The girl nodded once, barely noticeable, and kept walking. Troy straightened, already wearing victory on his face. "Don't worry, I'll be gentle." The girl lifted her eyes for the first time. One quiet stare, cold, unshaken. The gym fell halfway silent, just enough for everyone to feel something shift. Emma Rivers sat beside her mother near the entrance table, hands folded in her lap, legs tucked neatly under the chair as if she didn't want to take up space she hadn't earned. She listened to the echo of shouts and kicks from the main mat, each sound bouncing through the large room like it belonged to someone stronger, louder, braver. She didn't speak, she didn't fidget. She moved only when her mother brushed a loose hair behind her ear. Her mother filled out the registration form slowly, her voice soft. "Beginner class should be a good start," she murmured. "Nothing too fast, nothing too heavy." She glanced at Emma with a warm smile. "Just enough to help you feel at home." Emma nodded without a word. She wasn't afraid of moving. She wasn't afraid of learning. She was afraid of being watched. She was afraid of people thinking she didn't belong. Every time she entered a new space, she remembered her father's voice saying the same thing he said to her every day they trained together. "Move with respect, win without hurting." She whispered those words to herself now, the way a child might hold onto a blanket during a storm. Across the room, Master Troy Daniels stood like he believed gravity worked for him alone. His black belt hung perfectly even on both sides, and his uniform looked like it had been ironed between every kick he demonstrated. Strutted in long steps, calling out tips that sounded more like bragging than teaching. Martial arts is 90% confidence, and I've got enough for everyone. A group of teenage students laughed a little too loudly, repeating the line as if it were poetry. They practiced in tight clusters, punching the air with exaggerated flair, always checking to make sure Troy saw them. He always did. He loved being noticed. He loved being the center of the gym more than the gym itself. Parents sat on benches along the side, muttering to each other with tired smiles. They respected Troy's skill, but not always his attitude. Still, they stayed because their kids liked the place, and because Troy knew exactly how to win a crowd. He performed more than he taught. He entertained more than he explained. Every shout, every kick, every spin, everything had to show how effortless he made martial arts look. He clapped twice. Loud, sharp. The room snapped to attention. "Let's go, everyone. Speed round. Show me what you've got." Students hurried into lines. Feet shuffled. Hands lifted, eyes locked on Troy. He basked in the attention like sun. Emma watched him with the same calm stare she had shown when he called her out earlier. Something about him looked familiar. Not his face, not his height, not his moves, but the way he pushed people to watch him. Her father had explained people like that. Strength without humility becomes noise. Real power doesn't shout, it shows. Emma breathed softly at the memory, her father's hands guiding hers, his patience, his warmth, his steady voice correcting her stance over and over until her feet learned on their own. Her father wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, he rarely showed off, but he could move in ways that made the world slow down around him. And Emma learned by copying him, day by day, year by year, until she didn't have to think about how to move anymore. Her body remembered even when her heart ached. A pair of younger students walked past her, whispering loud enough for her to hear. "New kid, she looks scared. She won't last a week." Emma's shoulders lowered just slightly, but she didn't look up. She tightened her fingers around the edge of her mother's sleeve. Her mother squeezed her hand once gently. "You belong here," she whispered. "Don't forget that." Emma wanted to believe it. She wanted to feel it settle inside her chest. But the gym felt too loud, too bright, too heavy. She wished her father were here, guiding her into the room himself. But she only had his words now. She held on to them. Master Troy finished his speed round and strutted back to the center of the mat, rolling his shoulders like a performer between acts. He paused only to glance at the parents, making sure he still had their attention. He always needed eyes on him. Applause fed him. Silence annoyed him. And today he was hungry for more admiration than usual. His assistants lined up behind him, copying his stance almost perfectly. They were older teens, strong and talented, but their admiration for Troy made them more eager to impress him than to learn from him. They whispered to each other in quick bursts. "Did you see his kick? He's on fire today." He could take on anyone. At the far corner, Emma watched all of it with a quiet expression that never wavered. She didn't envy the attention. She didn't want to shine. She didn't want eyes on her at all. She just wanted to learn slowly, respectfully, the way her father had taught her. Her mother signed the last line on the form, exhaled softly, and placed the pen down. "There," she said, almost to herself. "A new start." She looked at Emma with gentle warmth. "Your dad would be proud you're trying," Emma nodded once. Not a big gesture, just enough to show she heard, enough to keep her emotions from spilling out. She held them tightly, the way children do when they're afraid letting go will make everything hurt again. Her mother stood and approached the counter to hand in the papers. Emma stayed in her seat, feet still, hands folded. She listened to the rhythm of kicks hitting pads, students grunting, and Troy's booming voice cutting through the noise. She watched him correct a student's stance by pushing his shoulder too hard, making the boy stumble. "Keep your center. Don't wobble like a tree in the wind." The boy blushed as the teens laughed. Troy laughed too. Emma's chest tightened. She remembered her father's hands guiding her shoulders gently. Not pushing, never embarrassing, never mocking. Teaching is not about being above someone, he used to say. It's about standing beside them until they can stand on their own. Emma's fingers curled slightly. Not in anger, in memory. Across the mat, Troy noticed Emma again. The small girl. The quiet one. The one who didn't react when he called her earlier. Something about her silence bothered him. It felt like she was ignoring him on purpose, even though she wasn't. To Troy, silence was disrespectful. Applause was worship. And he preferred worship. He leaned toward one of his assistants. "That kid," he whispered with a grin, "thinks she can even throw a punch." The assistant chuckled. "No way. Look at her, she's tiny." Troy raised an eyebrow, amused. Perfect, Emma didn't hear them. She just felt the weight of the gym around her, and she breathed slowly to steady herself. A small group of parents glanced at her with soft concern. They saw her size, her shyness, her quiet nature. They didn't know her past. They didn't know the hours she spent following her father's commands until they became instinct. They didn't know that beneath her small frame was a well of discipline deeper than anything most students here had touched. Emma only wanted to sign up. She only wanted to honor her father. She didn't want attention. She didn't want a crowd. She didn't want to be challenged. But pride always searches for soft targets, and Troy's pride was loud. Their paths crossed because he needed a moment to shine. She needed a place to breathe. And fate put them in the same room at the worst possible time for him and the hardest possible time for her. She lifted her eyes one more time, not high, just enough to see Troy pacing with his smug smile. Something in her gaze hardened, small, quiet, but real. A seed of strength pushing against fear. A breath later, Troy clapped his hands loudly, turning the whole room toward him again. The showman was ready, and whether she liked it or not, he was already choosing his next target. Troy's eyes swept over the room like a spotlight looking for someone to shine on, or someone to burn. The students straightened, ready for whatever trick he wanted to show next. His assistants grinned, eager for more laughter, more praise. More moments where Troy proved he was above everyone else. Then Troy's gaze landed on Emma again, small, quiet still, the exact opposite of the energy he lived on. He smirked. "There she is," he muttered under his breath. "My little volunteer." His assistants elbowed each other. "Go easy on her, boss," one whispered with a half laugh. "Yeah, don't break the new kid," their grins widened. Emma didn't hear them, but she felt the shift in the air when Troy stepped forward. His footsteps grew louder, heavier, like he wanted each one to echo inside her chest. She kept her eyes lowered, fingers twisting together in her lap. Troy pointed straight at her for the second time that day. "You," he called loudly. "Quiet girl, come here a minute." The class erupted again. Laughter rolled across the mat like a wave. Some parents exchanged looks of discomfort but stayed silent. Teen students leaned over each other whispering predictions. "She's gonna freak out. She won't even lift her hands. This is gonna be hilarious." Emma flinched at the noise. Her mother moved closer. "You don't have to," she whispered. "You can say no," Emma swallowed. She wished she could, but she knew everyone was watching. If she refused, the whispers would follow her long after she left. She took a small breath. "I'd rather not," she whispered. Troy cupped his hand to his ear dramatically. "What was that? Speak up." He waved her forward with a playful push of his wrist. "Come on, one little demo. Show the class how a beginner thinks." Beginner. The word stung more than it should have, even though it was technically true. Here she was a beginner. In this gym, no one knew the years she had trained before her world fell apart. No one knew who guided her hands. No one knew what she carried. Her mother touched her shoulder gently. "You can step in if you're uncomfortable, honey. I'm right here." Emma stood. Slow, light, controlled. Every movement small enough not to draw attention, but steady enough to show she wasn't being dragged by feet. Her feet stepped onto the mat, one after the other, almost soundless. The students closed in around her, forming a loose circle. Some slapped each other's shoulders, laughing under their breath. Others whispered fake cheers. "Go get him, new kid. Try not to cry." Emma didn't look at any of them. She stared at the mat for a moment, breathing through the tightness in her chest. Troy stretched his arms, rolling his head from side to side with exaggerated confidence. "Don't worry, kid," he said loudly. "I'll keep it slow." The teens laughed. "Yeah, right. She won't last a second." Emma's hands stayed at her sides. She didn't raise her fists. She didn't crouch. She didn't move into any stance at all. She just stood there, calm, unreadable, almost fragile. Troy eyed her posture and shook his head dramatically. "No stance, nothing. Come on. Give us something." Emma didn't respond. Her silence pushed another wave of laughter through the crowd. Her mother watched from the edge of the circle, hands clasped so tightly they trembled. She knew this moment wasn't about skill. It was about vulnerability. It was about a child forced into a spotlight she never asked for. Troy glanced around the room, soaking up the attention. "All right," he said with forced patience. "I'll start simple. Just follow along." Emma looked up at him, one small glance. Just enough to show she heard him. Just enough to show she was present. Her eyes were steady, completely steady. It unsettled Troy in a way he couldn't understand. He brushed the feeling off and stepped closer. "Ready?" Emma didn't answer. Her breath was slow, controlled, her father's lessons echoing in her mind like a soft drumbeat. "Move with respect, win without hurting." The circle tightened. Students leaned in. Parents sat straighter. Troy adjusted his stance, smirking like the outcome was already written. Emma didn't blink. That stillness made the room quieter than any loud moment Troy had ever created. A hush spread. Not complete silence, but the curious pause people make right before something they don't expect happens. Troy lifted his fist halfway, preparing the slow demonstration punch he used to show beginners how to block. Emma watched the movement with the same calm she had shown all day. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't step back. She simply waited, and the moment stretched thin, like the air itself was holding its breath. Troy let the tension sit a moment longer, enjoying the eyes on him, enjoying the smirks spreading across the students' faces. He tilted his head toward his assistants. "Watch this," he whispered loud enough for the front row to hear. Soft laughter followed. Emma stood still, completely still. A kind of calm that didn't belong to a child her age. Not shaking, not shrinking, not breaking, just waiting, like she was listening to something no one else could hear. Troy stepped closer, lowering his center of gravity, the way he always did when he wanted the crowd to admire his form. "Okay, kid," he said with a mocking sigh. "Try not to blink," the student snickered. "She's frozen. She's gonna get tapped in one hit. Look at her hands, she's terrified." But her mother saw something different. Emma's hands were relaxed, too relaxed for fear. Her shoulders weren't tight. Her posture wasn't stiff. She was calm in a way that made no sense to anyone who didn't know her history. Troy threw his shoulders back and raised his fist for the first punch. The slow, exaggerated one he used to show off his control. The one he expected to make Emma flinch, stumble, maybe even step back in embarrassment. He swung. Emma moved barely an inch, just enough. The punch slid past her like she was mist and he was swinging at the air. A few parents gasped softly. The students laughed again, but this time it sounded confused. Did she just? No, he missed on purpose. Yeah, he's messing with her. Troy reset his stance quickly, pretending the moment didn't throw him off. "Okay," he said a bit louder. "Good job not falling over." The joke fell flat. Emma didn't smile, didn't nod. She simply returned to stillness, her eyes gentle and steady. Troy frowned. "All right then," he muttered, trying again, but his voice wasn't as smooth as before. He sped up, a faster jab, quick and sharp, tried to keep up. Emma moved, a soft shift of her foot, a tilt of her shoulder, the strike missed by the width of a breath. Two teens stopped laughing. "Wait!" Troy clenched his jaw and threw another punch, harder, sharper. Emma leaned away just enough, not dramatic, not flashy, just precise. Then another, and another, and another. Each one missed. The room began to shift. Laughter died, whispers rose, breathing tightened. Parents leaned forward, eyes widening. Teens stepped back, unsure whether they should keep cheering or shut up. Even Troy's assistants exchanged uncertain glances. A boy near the front stammered, "Why isn't he landing anything?" Troy heard it. His pride twitched painfully. He pushed deeper into the sequence, trying not to look desperate. He stepped in for a quick combination. Jab, cross, tap. Moves meant to overwhelm a beginner or at least force a flinch. Emma didn't flinch. She moved like she had been taught by someone who didn't raise fighters, but raised thinkers. She flowed, not ran. She read him, not reacted to him. Her mother's fingers pressed over her mouth as she watched. She knew exactly what Emma was doing. She had seen those movements in her living room 100 times. Movements Emma practiced in silence, tears drying on her cheeks as she remembered her father's voice guiding every step. Troy's breathing quickened. "What are you doing?" he snapped, but it came out more panicked than he wanted. Emma didn't answer. She stepped back into stillness. The class circled tighter, the atmosphere thick with disbelief. A teen whispered, "Dude, she's dodging him." Another whispered back, "He's getting mad." Troy shook out his arms, trying to laugh, but it sounded thin. Okay, enough warm-up." He forced a smirk. "Let's see how you handle a real grab." His assistants perked up. "Here we go, now she'll trip." Emma's heartbeat stayed steady, the same rhythm her father drilled into her. Never panic, never rush. Move like water around stone. Troy lunged forward, not dangerously, but with enough speed to reclaim control of the moment. His hand shot out toward her shoulder, meant to tap her lightly, show she couldn't escape forever. A harmless move, a playful demonstration. But his pride was behind it, and pride is never harmless. Emma saw the shift in his weight, the tension in his wrist, the angle of his elbow. She stepped toward him, not away. Her foot landed silently, her arm rose gently, her body followed the path her father taught her years ago. Her father had said, "When someone tries to take control, use their force to remind them they don't own you." Emma met Troy's momentum with a movement so soft it barely seemed real. She redirected his arm, shifted her weight, tilted her frame. Not to hurt him, not to win, just to answer the moment. His body tilted forward unexpectedly. His assistants leaned in. "Boss!" Troy stumbled, unable to stop his own force. Emma stepped aside. One small step, the room inhaled. Troy fell toward the mat, and the entire gym froze, waiting to see where he would land. Master Troy hit the mat with a dull, heavy thud that rolled across the gym like a sound no one was ready to hear. For a moment, nothing moved. Not a breath, not a whisper. Even the air felt stuck between disbelief and embarrassment. Emma stood a single step away from him, her posture unchanged, her hands still at her sides, her face calm in a way that made the room feel even smaller. Troy blinked up at the ceiling, stunned as if the ground had betrayed him. His pride hit harder than his body. A few students gasped. One teen choked on a nervous laugh that he tried to swallow. Parents leaned forward, unsure whether they had just seen an accident or something impossible. Emma's mother clasped her hands so tightly the knuckles whitened, but her eyes stayed soft, understanding the moment before the room did. Troy pushed himself up fast, too fast, as if speed could erase the fall. His face flushed red, a mix of anger and humiliation swirling together. He forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Okay, lucky timing, he muttered, brushing imaginary dust from his uniform. His assistants exchanged awkward glances, unsure whether to laugh with him or stay silent. One tried to chuckle, but stopped when he realized no one else joined. The teens who had been mocking Emma earlier now watched her with a new kind of silence, one that held fewer jokes and more questions. Emma didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't shrink. She simply returned to stillness, the same soft posture she held before the demonstration began. She bowed her head slightly, a polite gesture that confused Troy even more. Her calmness irritated him, though he didn't know why. Something about her silence made him feel small, and he hated feeling small. "All right," he said louder, trying to regain command of the moment. "Let's try that again." No surprises. His tone sharpened on the last words. Students shifted uncomfortably. Some parents leaned back with raised eyebrows. The mood had changed. The fun had drained out of the air. Now it felt like watching someone try too hard to win a game he wasn't supposed to be playing. Troy stepped forward again, but this time his movements weren't showy. They were tight, rushed, defensive. His pride had taken the lead, pushing his confidence into the corner. "Ready?" he asked, but it sounded like a challenge, not a question. Emma lifted her eyes just enough to see him. Her breath steady, her face still. It only made him angrier. He threw a fast punch, sharper than before. Emma leaned away, barely. Almost effortlessly, gasps echoed again. Another punch, another slip, a third. Each one missed, each miss louder than the last, even though no sound came from them. Emma's feet glided like she knew every strike before it came. Her father's lessons echoed through her movements, silent, precise, respectful. Troy's frustration sharpened with each failure. "What are you doing?" he snapped. He didn't mean to show panic, but it leaked into his voice anyway. Students shifted from foot to foot, unsure if they should laugh, clap, or step out of the circle. One teen whispered, "He can't touch her." Another muttered, "Is she even trying?" Troy heard them. His dignity tightened like a fist inside his chest. This was supposed to be a quick joke, a light moment, a chance to make people laugh. Instead, the joke was turning on him in front of everyone. He clenched his teeth and pushed forward. "Fine," he hissed. "Let's see you handle this." He lunged for her shoulder again, faster than before, trying to tap her, trying to prove he still had control. Emma saw it coming long before his hand reached her. His stance was off, his weight heavy on the wrong foot, his balance broken by the frustration pulsing through him. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She simply followed the instinct years of quiet training had carved into her muscles. She stepped toward him, her body moving in one smooth wave. She guided his arm the way water guides a falling branch, soft, calm, decisive. Troy stumbled again. His assistant stiffened. Parents leaned forward. Emma stepped aside gently. Troy's momentum betrayed him, pulling him forward before he could catch himself. He flailed for balance. His feet slid out of sync. His body tilted, and the room inhaled all at once. He hit the mat a second time. Harder, louder. With no way to hide it, silence crashed down instantly. True silence, heavy, absolute, the kind that makes every heartbeat feel too loud. Troy lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, but this time he didn't move right away. He seemed frozen in disbelief, as if he couldn't understand how a child, small, shy, quiet, could make him fall twice without touching him with force. The humiliation sat on his chest like a weight he couldn't lift. Emma bowed again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to make you fall." Her words floated through the quiet air, gentle as a leaf landing on still water. The contrast made the moment sharper, more painful, more powerful. Her apology wasn't mockery. It was humility, and that humility cut deeper than any hit Troy had ever taken. The students stared at her with wide eyes. The teens who laughed earlier stood silent now, their admiration shifting. Awe washed over some faces, embarrassment over others. The parents exchanged looks, surprise, respect, disbelief, each expression feeding the tension still vibrating in the room. Emma's mother stepped closer, her voice steady, warm, full of truth. Her father taught her, she said softly. Her coach, Nathan Rivers. The name rippled through the crowd. Some parents whispered, some teens widened their eyes. They had heard of that name, a respected instructor, a quiet master, a man whose teachings were known for discipline, humility, and precision. He taught her every day, her mother continued. Until he passed, Emma lowered her eyes. He said real martial arts is about control, not showing off. The words hung in the air like a judgment no one dared challenge. The silence deepened, heavy, humbling. A silence that broke Troy more than the fall did. He felt something collapse inside him, the wall he had built with pride, applause, and empty confidence. The room saw it, he saw it, and Emma, the smallest person on the mat, stood at the center of a truth he could no longer run from. The turning point had landed, and everyone knew nothing would be the same after this silence. Troy stayed on the mat longer than anyone expected. His chest rose and fell with sharp breaths he tried to hide. But the room saw everything. They saw the shock in his eyes. They saw the humiliation tightening his jaw. They saw the way he stared at Emma like he was trying to rewrite what had just happened. Emma stood a few feet away, her posture unchanged, her breathing slow and steady like she wasn't the center of every stare in the gym. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She didn't even look proud. She just waited, calm, silent, polite. That quietness made the moment sharper, made Troy's fall heavier. He finally pushed himself up, but the confidence he wore earlier didn't rise with him. His shoulders dropped. His movements weren't smooth. They were stiff, rushed, unsteady. He looked around the circle and saw faces that weren't laughing anymore. They weren't cheering. They weren't impressed. They were unsure, curiously unsure. That uncertainty stung him more than the fall itself. Emma bowed once more, her voice barely touching the air. "I'm sorry." Her apology felt like a mirror held up to Troy's ego. Gentle, honest, unavoidable. A teenager whispered. Did she just dodge everything? Another whispered back. She didn't even raise her hands. A third muttered, how did she drop him twice? Every whisper carved deeper into Troy's pride. He forced himself to stand straighter. He needed control back. He needed to show he was still the authority in the room. He stepped toward Emma again, but something in his steps betrayed him. His footfalls were heavier, his breath shorter, his confidence cracked. Again, he said, but it wasn't loud. It wasn't playful, it wasn't proud. It was shaky, like the word slipped before he could stop it. The students looked at each other. Some frowned, some shifted. They could all feel the shift. This wasn't a lesson anymore. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a demo. It was a man fighting the reflection of his own pride. Emma didn't move backward. She didn't refuse. She simply stepped into her calm again. That stillness held more power than any stance she could take. It told the room she wasn't afraid. She wasn't trying to win. She was just responding to what came toward her. Troy exhaled hard and lifted his fists, not in a theatrical way, not in a show-off performance, but in a clumsy, frustrated way that revealed how rattled he had become. He launched forward with a quick series of strikes, faster than before, sharper than before, more desperate than before. Emma moved with a softness that made the room exhale each time she shifted. She slipped under a punch. She leaned past a jab. She turned around a high strike as if she had seen it a second before it came. Each movement came from a place deeper than technique. It came from memory, from discipline, from years of learning in silence at her father's side. A parent whispered, she's reading him. Another whispered, that's not luck. A teen muttered, he can't land a single hit. Not one. Troy heard the whispers. They stabbed at him. His movements grew sloppier. He struck again, harder, reaching for any contact that could ground him back in authority. But his arm cut through empty space every time. Emma's feet glided in small arcs, barely noticeable. She never made wasteful movements, only what she needed, only what protected, only what answered. Her father had taught her that way. Never use more force than the moment needs, he used to say. Your power is your control. Troy lunged with a frustrated grunt, trying again to grab her shoulder. His body twisted too far. His center collapsed. His balance slipped through his feet like sand. Emma stepped into him, not away, Into him, she placed one hand lightly near his elbow, one foot angled across his path. A single shift of her weight guided Troy's force past her. She didn't push him. She didn't shove. She redirected. The room watched the moment unfold like a slow-motion truth they couldn't deny. Troy's body turned. His footing failed. His momentum betrayed him again. He hit the mat the third time. The sound echoed louder than the first two. A hollow, painful reminder that this wasn't an accident. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a trick. Something deeper was happening. Something Troy had never prepared for. The gym stayed utterly silent. No one laughed. No one whispered. No one even breathed loudly. They all stared at Emma like she had just rewritten the rules they thought they understood. A teenager near the back muttered in disbelief. No way. Troy lay there, his eyes unfocused, his breath scattered. The fall wasn't just physical, no. It was emotional. His pride cracked like glass under quiet pressure. He didn't know how to hide behind his usual smirk or loud voice. The room had seen too much. Emma bowed again. It didn't sound like a victory. It sounded like sincerity. Responsibility. Compassion. A softness Troy didn't deserve but desperately needed. Everyone looked to Troy, waiting for him to respond, to rise, to explain, to grab hold of anything that could save his dignity. But he stayed on the mat, staring at the floor, the weight of his behavior pressing down on him. That was when Emma's mother stepped forward. Her voice broke the frozen air gently. Her father taught her, she said. Coach Nathan Rivers. A shift rippled through the crowd. Nathan Rivers. A name with weight. A name with respect. A name with legacy. Parents recognized it. Teens heard it in stories. Even some assistants stiffened. He trained Olympic juniors. Her mother continued softly. He trained world competitors. Emma lowered her head as her mother spoke. Her eyes softened. Her breath tightened with memory. He taught me to move, she whispered, and not to hurt people. The room absorbed each word like a truth they'd needed without knowing. Respect replaced confusion. Awe replaced doubt. And every eye turned from Troy to the quiet girl who had never wanted attention. Every witness felt it. The justice in silence, the lesson in humility, the shift in power so complete that it made the room feel new. The gym stayed frozen around Emma, as if the air itself refused to move until someone understood what they had witnessed. Troy remained on the mat, his breath struggling to find a steady rhythm. He had fallen before in training, but never like this. Never in front of a crowd. Never from a child who hadn't raised a fist, who hadn't struck him, who hadn't even tried to prove anything. His pride had taken the hardest hit, and there was nothing he could hide behind. No joke, no loud performance, no confident smile. The truth was too visible. Emma stood in quiet stillness, her posture gentle, her hands soft by her sides. She didn't glow with victory. She didn't puff her chest. She didn't look around to see who admired her. She simply breathed with the calm of someone who had learned to carry her strength without showing it off. That calm carved the moment into something deeper than a fall. It became a lesson. It became a mirror for every person in the room. A teen boy near the edge of the circle whispered, "She didn't even hit him." Another answered, "She didn't need to." A girl murmured, "That's real skill." The whispers grew into awe, and they spread until Troy had no space left to hide from them. He pushed himself up slowly, hands shaking as he tried to gather himself. But when he sat upright and met the eyes of his students, he saw something that hit harder than the fall. They didn't fear him. They didn't idolize him. They didn't laugh with him. They were looking at him with disappointment, with realization, with a new understanding he didn't want them to have. Emma didn't look at him with judgment. She looked at him with compassion. And somehow that made it worse. Her silence told him she hadn't meant to humiliate him. She had only reacted, only moved, only followed the lessons her father gave her. She wasn't trying to win anything. She was only trying not to hurt him. Her mother stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm, as she trained with her father every day for years. He taught her discipline. He taught her control. He taught her to honor the art, not mock it. The parents nodded slowly. Some exchanged apologies with their eyes for laughing earlier. The teens stared at Emma with newfound respect, their smirks replaced with open mouths and wide eyes. Even Troy's assistants, who had joined in on the jokes at the start, now looked down at the floor, guilt warming their cheeks. Emma lifted her head slightly, her voice barely carried, but the silence made it echo louder than any shout. "He told me that strength isn't for showing off. It's for protecting people. Troy felt those words land inside him like stones sinking through water. His whole life inside the gym had been built on applause, admiration, and performance. He had forgotten the purpose behind the movements. He had twisted the meaning of martial arts into something flashy and shallow. And now, in front of a crowd he had always controlled, a small child had reminded them all what real discipline looked like. "Control before glory," Emma said softly, repeating her father's phrase as if she were handing Troy a gift he didn't deserve. A parent whispered emotionally. Her father raised her right. Another added, "This man needs that lesson more than anyone." Troy swallowed hard. His throat burned with shame. His eyes stung with something he refused to name. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked before any word formed. The silence pressed on him like a weight he had carried without realizing until this moment. His pride crumbled piece by piece under the truth he could no longer outrun. Emma looked at him not with triumph, but with a kind sadness. The kind reserved for someone who never learned what they should have. Her expression didn't mock him. It didn't challenge him. It simply offered him a chance to understand. The room saw it. They felt it. Justice wasn't loud. Justice wasn't cruel. Justice wasn't revenge. Justice was the quiet truth standing calmly in the middle of the mat, showing everyone what real strength looked like. Troy finally lowered his gaze. His shoulders sagged. His hands opened where they had once curled into fists of pride. For the first time, he didn't try to protect his ego. He didn't try to defend himself. He didn't reach for excuses. He just sat there, broken open by a lesson he had never allowed himself to learn. Emma's mother stepped forward and gently placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Emma looked up with a soft expression that held both grief and gratitude. Grief for the father she missed, gratitude for the chance to honor him. Her mother turned to the crowd. Her father believed that strength without humility becomes danger. He always said arrogance collapses on itself. A teen whispered. Just like today, Troy flinched. The truth was sharp, but it was fair. Emma bowed one more time to Troy, a bow filled with respect he hadn't shown her earlier. That bow silenced the gym more deeply than anything she had done physically. It wasn't a victory pose. It wasn't triumph. It was forgiveness. It was grace. It was everything Troy had failed to show when he mocked her. And that was what broke him. Not the fall. Not the laughter fading. Not the shock of the room. It was the respect she showed him after everything he had done. His breath shook as he finally whispered, How did you do that?" Emma looked at him gently. I listened. He frowned, confused. "I listened to what?" She touched her chest lightly. "To what my father taught me." Her answer didn't need more words. The lesson was complete. The genius reveal had landed. The arrogant master had been silenced by the quiet girl he tried to embarrass. The room had witnessed truth, talent, and justice in one soft, unforgettable moment. And in that silence, the entire gym knew they would never forget the day a child taught the teacher what strength really meant. The room stayed frozen long after Emma stopped moving. It felt as if every person in the gym had been pulled into the same quiet breath, all waiting for someone else to speak first. No one dared. No one wanted to break the moment that had reshaped everything they thought they knew. Troy sat on the mat with his hands pressed into the floor. His shoulders slumped so deeply it looked like gravity had finally found a way to humble him. He tried to inhale steadily but couldn't. His chest rose in short, uneven pulls. His eyes stayed lowered, not in fear of Emma, but in fear of the person he had been only minutes earlier. Emma stepped back beside her mother, her movements small and gentle, as if she didn't want to disturb the atmosphere she had unknowingly transformed. Her mother touched her hand softly, pride glowing behind the worry in her eyes. She knew what the falls meant. She knew what the silence meant. She knew what Emma had shown. Emma didn't smile. She didn't beam. She didn't search the crowd for approval. She simply breathed, steady and calm, letting her father's teachings settle inside her like warm light. A cluster of teens cautiously approached her, moving slowly as if they were entering a sacred space. One of them swallowed hard. "That was unbelievable," he whispered, afraid to speak louder. Another teen nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't even see how you moved." A girl stepped forward and added, "I thought he was unbeatable." Their words didn't float around with the same arrogance they had earlier. Now they carried respect. Pure, honest respect. Parents stood and approached too, offering warm smiles and quiet compliments. "Your daughter is gifted," one mother said. "Not just strong, controlled." Another added, "She's got a rare kind of discipline. You should be proud." Emma lowered her eyes politely, not knowing how to hold such praise. Her mother squeezed her hand again, whispering, "You see? You see? This is what your father taught you for." Emma blinked softly, feeling the weight of those words in her chest. Even Troy's top assistants came forward, moving with heavy guilt on their faces. They had laughed earlier. They had mocked Emma, even if only in whispers. Now they couldn't look her in the eyes without feeling the sting of their own immaturity. One of them finally managed to speak. "Sorry," he muttered. "We didn't know." The other nodded, cheeks flushed. "We should have treated you better." Their voices trembled with sincerity. Emma offered a small nod, not holding anger, not needing them to kneel, just accepting their apology with the same quiet grace she had shown everything else. Then Troy stood, slowly, awkwardly, like every bone in his body had gained extra weight. He walked toward Emma without his usual swagger, without the loud steps, without the dramatic commands. Every footstep sounded like regret. When he finally reached her, he didn't speak immediately. He simply stood there, breathing hard, staring at the child who had changed him without using a single harsh word. He lowered his gaze, his voice cracking before the first syllable left his throat. "Owe you an apology." The gym went silent again. All eyes locked on him. He swallowed hard, then continued. "I disrespected you. I disrespected your father's teachings. I disrespected what martial arts is meant to be." His voice wavered, but he pushed through it. "You taught me more in 10 minutes than I've taught in years." Emma blinked softly, unsure how to respond. She didn't need him to apologize. She didn't need him to kneel. She didn't need him to explain himself. But hearing his voice soften, hearing truth break out where arrogance once ruled, made her chest warm with quiet relief. Her mother nodded approvingly, her expression gentle, encouraging Troy to keep going. He turned to the rest of the class, his voice trembling. All of you saw it. I forgot what matters. I turned this place into a stage instead of a school." His eyes glazed over slightly. "That ends today." The teens exchanged stunned looks. Parents folded their arms, impressed by the honesty. Even his assistants listened closely, waiting to hear how far he would go. Troy turned back to Emma. "If you'll allow it," he asked, "I'd like to offer you a place in our youth leadership program. You have a gift, not just for moving, but for understanding the heart of the art." Emma's eyes widened slightly. She had never imagined joining anything leadership-related. She had never imagined being at the center of any group. But something about the offer didn't feel like pressure. It felt like trust, like acknowledgement, like a bridge she didn't know she could cross. She looked to her mother, who smiled warmly and nodded. Emma took a small breath and bowed her head in acceptance. The room erupted, not in laughter, not in mock cheers, but in genuine applause. Warm, encouraging, proud. The sound filled Emma's chest with a glow she had never felt before. She didn't seek attention, but she felt seen in a way that didn't hurt. In a way that reminded her she wasn't invisible. In a way that honored her father's memory. In the days that followed, everything inside Ridgewood Academy changed. The showmanship faded. The boasting softened. The atmosphere shifted from loud competition to steady discipline. Students who once focused on impressing Troy now focused on improving themselves. Troy led classes with humility, often catching himself before raising his voice or showing off. Sometimes he repeated Emma's words without realizing. "A control before glory," he would mutter during drills. "A respect over pride." Emma became a quiet guiding force. Not loud, not commanding. Just consistent. Teens looked up to her, not because she talked, but because she didn't need to. Because she moved with purpose. Because she led with calm. Because she radiated the kind of confidence that came from discipline, not ego. Troy often stood at the back of the room during warm-ups, watching her lead stretches with gentle cues and silent demonstrations. Pride, not the arrogant kind, but the humble kind, settled on his face like a peaceful shadow. One afternoon, as the sun dipped lower and the class finished their routine, Emma stepped to the front, bowing with her hands lightly pressed together. The students bowed back. Troy watched her with a soft expression and whispered to himself, the smallest one became the strongest teacher. In that moment, everyone in the gym knew the truth. They had witnessed justice. They had witnessed humility rise above pride. They had seen a quiet girl reshape an entire academy without raising her voice. Emma didn't just win a moment. She lifted the whole room. She restored what had been lost. And in doing so, she honored her father more deeply than any trophy or title ever could. The gym emptied slowly, but the weight of what happened stayed behind like a quiet echo. Emma stood near the edge of the mat, her hands folded in front of her, breathing softly as her mother packed their things. The applause had faded. The whispers had settled. Only the truth remained simple, steady, undeniable. It wasn't the falls that changed the room. It wasn't the silence or the shock. It was the reminder that real strength doesn't shout. It doesn't brag. It doesn't chase applause. It grows quietly inside a person until a moment arrives when it finally needs to be seen. Emma had never tried to impress anyone. She had never pushed herself into the center. She stepped onto that mat expecting humiliation, expecting whispers, expecting the same judgment she had felt in every new place since her father passed. Instead, she gave the gym something they didn't expect. A lesson wrapped in compassion. A truth wrapped in discipline. A gentle reminder that ability means nothing without heart, and confidence means nothing without humility. Parents talked softly among themselves as they gathered their coats. "I never underestimate someone," one mother murmured, shaking her head. "Especially a child." A father added, "Arrogance collapses under truth." Every time, their words wove into the quiet air, carrying a lesson the whole gym had learned together. The teens packed their gear more thoughtfully than usual. No jokes, no bragging. They moved with a new understanding of the art they were learning. They realized that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks in on small feet and speaks only when necessary. Troy lingered in the doorway, leaning against the frame with a distant look in his eyes. He wasn't broken. He wasn't defeated. He was changed. The kind of change that begins with discomfort, but grows into something better. He watched Emma tie her shoes with slow concentration, the same calm she had shown on the mat. For the first time, he understood what he had been missing. It wasn't skill. It wasn't talent. It was purpose. Real purpose, the kind her father had lived, the kind she carried without even trying. Emma stood and looked around the now quiet gym. She didn't see a place where she had embarrassed someone. She saw a place where her father's lessons had taken root. A place where humility had silenced pride. A place where respect had replaced arrogance. She breathed in slowly, letting her father's voice settle over her heart. Strength is for protecting, not proving. She whispered it softly to herself, like a promise she intended to keep. Her mother touched her shoulder. "You did well today," she said. Emma looked up. "I didn't mean to make him fall." "I know," her mother answered with a gentle smile. That's why it mattered. As they walked toward the exit, the gym seemed to breathe with them, as if it too had learned something, had learned something. Emma didn't notice the way the teens watched her with respect, or the way the parents nodded warmly at her mother. She didn't hear Troy whisper the phrase she had given him, a control before glory, as if repeating it could help him rebuild himself. She didn't need to. The lesson she delivered was already planted. Outside, the air felt cool and quiet. Emma stepped into it with the same calm she carried all day. She didn't glow with pride. She didn't replay the moment. She simply accepted it. Accepted that sometimes the smallest voice can deliver the biggest truth. Accepted that courage doesn't always roar. Accepted that real integrity stands strongest after humiliation, not before it. Humiliation fades. Integrity rises, and sometimes the smallest person in the room becomes the one who reminds everyone what strength truly means.